There are a lot of people in the space I operate. And again, there's no barriers to entry just to open a company. To manufacture and to provide the quality and value that I do took a lot of effort. And I knew that there were some brands out there that did a pretty good job. Ralph Lauren, his brand is his lifestyle. And so I didn't want to just create something that didn't have an identity. And so I kind of looked at their company and what he had done and modeled it after that, along with Brunello Cucinelli. There's another brand that he is an amazing human being. He's a big philanthropist now. And we were able to visit them in Solomeo, which is their headquarters in Italy. But it was pretty cool because when we got there, we toured the village. He restored this whole village, and again, going into the lifestyle, like he didn't create a brand; he created good for mankind. He's impacted lots of lives in a great way through the restoration of his village and employing a lot of the people in the area. And I think his company's now valued at a few $billions. We were sitting with the employees eating lunch, and they provide lunch to the employees every day. And it's like 3 courses. So it was a really cool experience that type of experience could be translated into, obviously, the lifestyle brand that I wanted to create, giving people more than just clothes to wear.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun about all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today, Jeff is interviewing Kyle Doherty. Kyle is the founder of Charles and Richards, a design and manufacturing company specializing in custom-made men's clothing. Prior to founding Charles and Richards, Kyle held a variety of sales jobs in the clothing and other industries. Kyle has a Bachelor of Science in Marketing from Kansas University. You can learn more about Kyle at charlesandrichards.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Kyle.
Kyle, welcome to the Corporate Couch this afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, very excited. You're our first fashion clothing guru expert. So, we sat down recently after an introduction from my friend Mark Schaefer, who connected us. So we had a nice conversation. So thank you for coming on the couch today with me.
Mark's a great guy. I'm glad he sent me over your way.
Yeah, he is. So let's get a fun question. People that know you, fairly well, what one thing would they be surprised about you?
That's a really good question. Well, everybody knows I'm not the most organized, so there's that. Because people that don't know me very well, they come in and they see the shop and things. That might be something that a new person would not really know about me. But I don't know. I'm a really open book.
There you go. There's no surprises. What you see is what you get with Kyle.
Pretty much. I don't really have anything in the closet, if you will, to hide. It's my brand, and my brand is my life, and my life is my brand, I guess. So I'm fortunate where my family's kind of a part of that. And
yeah. So you grew up in Kansas City, went to the OG Lee Summit High School, right?
I did. I was fortunate to be a Tiger for high school. Did not go to MU like a lot of my classmates, but yeah, had a great time out in Lee Summit. Spent part of my senior year as a foreign exchange student in Italy.
So before high school, Kyle, what was fun for you growing up, in your single digit years and early teens? What you loved doing?
I was always playing a sport. Didn't matter really what it was. My mother was a saint. If we weren't at a practice or a game, we were outside playing football, tag, building forts. I guess not sports related there, but we just spent every waking moment we could outside. And then the organized sports, we were traveling a lot with baseball up until I was in junior high. And then same with soccer and basketball we didn't travel with, but we had a pretty good team there and really enjoyed playing that up to high school where everybody caught up to me height wise. So I went from playing center as a eighth grader, just under 6 foot, to my freshman year of high school, everybody catching up where I didn't really even play guard. So switched
That shows
over.
how versatile you were as an athlete, though. You went from a post position to, point guard or shooting guard. So there you go.
Yeah, and then after that, yeah, didn't play my sophomore year of high school, or actually my freshman year of high school. I didn't play, didn't end up playing basketball any longer, and so ended up running track, cross country. Put a lot of effort and energy into that, and also played varsity soccer my sophomore year of high school, as well as running cross country at the same time, and realized that was too much, so focused on running after that.
So you mentioned building forts. So another guest, Jonathan Jones of Demdeco, he mentioned as a kid building go-karts. So did you build any go-karts? Because I did, because that's we have that in common, Jonathan and I.
Yeah, I wish I got as far as taking apart a couple old lawnmowers.
There you go.
And then my mother wondering what we were doing with, I'm sure gas was spilling everywhere. I mean, I think I was in fifth grade. So my son's age currently 10, 11 years old. And yeah, we took apart a lot of stuff, but weren't so great about putting it back together when it came to more of the mechanical side of engineering, if you will.
So what did you have any aspirations as a child? When you grew up, you were going to be this. What was this for you?
Yeah, it was. I wanted to be at the age of, I think it was 9 or 10. I was fortunate to travel a lot as a kid. Grew up, my mother, I speak of her. She is a saint. She raised my three brothers and I, and she always made a point for us to travel. And so we were fortunate to stay in some pretty nice hotels around we traveled within the U.S., but anywhere from Dakotas, Wyoming, down obviously Colorado and whatnot, down to Key West. So I wanted to own hotels. Actually, I wanted to be a hotel entrepreneur, and I loved the word entrepreneur before it became a buzzword. And now I have somewhat of a disdain for it because when I envisioned it, it was building something great, and it wasn't a buzzword. It was like you just get out and you do it. And then somewhere along the way, I got into fashion. I've always sewn since I was like 4 years old, and so it all kind of shifted to building a lifestyle brand.
So how did you get into sewing at 4?
So my great grandmother Rose was the head seamstress at Nellie Dawn, which was a very large ready-made dress company here in Kansas City. We actually had the second largest garment district at the time that she was working full time, and the second largest garment district in the United States, that is. And so she eventually, obviously, retired. And when I was born, she was around. How old she was when she passed, but she was really big into sewing still, and taught us how to sew just simple things with felt and a needle, and it was pretty interesting doing that as a young kid. But you learn pretty quick when you start poking yourself. So
Yeah, 4 years old. Yeah, sure. Well, so my mom immigrated from Italy, and she had they all learned to sew, and her and her sisters, my aunts, and we had this old Singer. Didn't have a big house, a 2-bedroom, and we had this kind of off area to our living room, where there was kind of a built-in desk and by the radiator, but the sewing machine was right there. It was an old Singer. It had the big foot pedal, not like a foot pedal, like a
The-
platform.
yeah,
I,
treadle
I,
foot.
I used to always play with it, just 'cause I knew
Yeah.
nothing about sewing. I did have to sew a vest in seventh grade home economics, so that it wasn't the highlight of my academic career at all. But
Hopefully it was able to be worn at least.
yeah, yes, yes. It, in the dark, I wore it a lot.
Yeah.
I could not wear that in public. Um, so, did you love clothes growing up?
I did not wear a pair of jeans until I was, this is, my mother recently told me this. I was, I think in sixth grade, she said, because my son is now getting into looking dapper every day. And before he really just didn't care. He'd set out his clothes and he'd get dressed. But now he kind of puts himself together. So I was like, oh yeah, you did the exact same thing. You didn't wear a pair of jeans until about sixth grade.
Wow, that's
And then
phenomenal. Um,
yeah. And then I became very particular right about that same time about pretty much every facet of my life. I don't know what the switch was, but
so,
it
so,
happened early.
so a couple of questions there, Kyle. So, what did you wear while you were building forts? Like, what was the attire there?
We in the summer it wasn't OSHA approved, that's for sure.
Okay,
But we
so shorts were acceptable. Yeah.
shorts and t-shirt.
Okay.
Yeah. Shorts and a t-shirt, beat up shoes.
Yeah.
Just kind of yeah, that was the time where you just didn't care. Summers we really didn't care too much, but it was more of the layering time here in the Midwest where you've got to throw on more than a pair of shorts and t-shirt in the middle of winter.
Yeah. So I'm not a Mike Wallace, 60-minute style interviewer. I'm not I don't try to put anybody on the spot. So this could be my most probing question I've ever asked a guest. Were you voted best dressed in your high school senior class?
That is funny because I was.
There you go. Oh, see there.
I was. Yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
I love
That's
it.
funny you asked that because we did this like career day as well, where we did like mock interviews through a marketing program I was in high school, and it's like a district wide thing, and I was voted best dressed there as well. So I guess it's no surprise that I got into clothing with the way I was dressing and appreciating what went into it. So
Yeah, and I have to say, when I was meeting you for coffee, I did make sure I was kind of dressed, appropriately. It'd be hard. I figured you were going to dress, in a high fashion style. And I also was actually best dressed in my high school class, but it was a very low bar. We had a very apathetic class, so like I won with like 3 votes. And I wore
but
hand
hey,
me downs from my cousin's cousin who was older than me, else I would have never won because I didn't have any good clothes.
well, hey, the clothing used to be made very, very well. So when we were,
Yeah,
well, yeah, obviously you're a few years older than I am, but when we were both growing up, clothing was made completely different than it is today. So
yeah, I would agree. Um, so what made you go be a foreign exchange student in high school?
So my mother traveled, but going back to my mom, she traveled a lot when she was a kid, as my grandfather worked for TWA, and she spent a lot of time over in Europe, or she was fortunate to spend a lot of time in Europe, and really encouraged us to get out and experience other cultures. And we had a program with my high school where we would go over to Italy, and then they would come over and visit us the following year. Um, and so when that opportunity presented itself, it was my math teacher at the time actually that put on the program, or he was the coordinator, I guess. And he said, "You're going." And I said, "Okay." And my mom signed me up for it, and off I went.
Yeah, I love it. And for those millennials, possibly Gen Xers out there, the TWA is Trans World Airlines, no longer. I'm trying to remember the lineage. I'm not even sure where TWA sits in the American United. Definitely wasn't Southwest that didn't buy them. I don't know who did, but
Yeah, I I'm sure there's somebody out there who's
Yeah.
going to comment on that, but I don't remember.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. They were a big airline back in the day.
they
Um,
were.
so you go to KU. Did you you graduate with a Bachelor of Science in Marketing? Was that your beginning major? And why? And if it was, why
No,
did you choose it?
I actually went to KU for three reasons: to run track and cross country, a girl, of course, and then to major in architecture. So going back to the hotel entrepreneur, I wanted to major in architecture, start designing the hotels, and then work for a firm for a little while and break off, get some financing, and build a hotel company. Um, I also at the time was sewing with some leather that I got from an upholster in Lawrence, and then I started working with a leather shop guy out there, and kind of switched my interest to fashion when we didn't have a fashion-ish program. I say fashion, I use that more of tailoring, kind of a delineation between fashion and tailoring, where I didn't know how to do it. So I was creating a luxury brand, or what I thought was a luxury brand, my freshman through senior year of college. And then, I ended up switching my sophomore year to marketing through the business school, and didn't think I'd get a marketing or BS in marketing. But that's kind of where I ended up with a natural flow. And it allowed me to, it wasn't as intense as the architecture program. And so it allowed me the free time to be outside for one, and also sew and start my second business essentially.
Did you love the sewing part and the fashion part so much that you wanted to start that business? Kind of what was your mindset? I mean, for a 20-year-old, if to start a business, it's in that late 2000s.
Yeah. It's 2006, 2007 is really when I actually sold a few bags, and I can't say that I made any money because, yeah, there wasn't much scalability there. I I just loved it. Yeah, I just loved it. It was I've always worked with my hands. I've always built things from anything with my grandfather. Actually, going back to when I was a kid, my grandfather would hand me a stack of paper, scissors, and tape when I was sick. I'd go over to their house and I'd watch the movie Hook on repeat. I'd watch it four times in a day while my mom was at work, and I would build all kinds of things with that paper, anywhere from soccer goals and a soccer ball where I'd play in their basement, or all the way through. I think one time I watched Cool Runnings and I made a mock bobsled so I could
Funny.
be a part of the team.
Love
So yeah,
it. Love
so
it.
always worked with my hands, and
Yeah.
then the sewing aspects got made fun of quite a bit when I was younger for it, and with being the jock, I guess, that I was, kind of put that on the back burner for a while. And then I realized when I got to college that it was quite masculine actually to be working with leather and um, the harder materials, I guess, to work with. And I really enjoyed making and designing bags. The whole shtick there was uh, clients or girls would give me a necktie from their father, an important male figure in their life, and I would take the necktie apart and then incorporate it into a handbag, so they were able to carry that person with them every day. And
Oh wow.
that was something that I really loved doing, because I'm big on heritage. That allowed me to kind of express it, where you've got this really soft material next to something that's very delicate, next to something that's very robust, with the leathers that I was using at the time. And it was just a nice contrast, and obviously carrying a part of a person that you love with you every day is pretty awesome too. So
Yeah. No, that's wonderful, man. Um, yeah. So you graduate from KU. How did you navigate to your first let's say W-2 job, and did you continue your own business? Tell us about that?
Yeah. So going back to the entrepreneurial side, when I was running track and cross country at a younger age, I started a timing consulting company with a buddy of mine, Brandon Daniels. And so we did that actually through college on the weekends. Like many college students who worked several different things, and that was one that paid pretty darn well. And so after college, we were still doing that, and I was working part-time. And then I realized I needed to get more into sales and build a network because that's the biggest thing I didn't have. It wasn't a fraternity, and I really didn't take advantage of the college experience with the networking side of things. So I got into sales working with a company called Astor and Black. And at the timing consulting company, well, we did too much consulting where we consulted ourselves out of business. And at the time, guys, everybody was wearing suits to the office. And I got into that business where I just started selling. I didn't know. I knew a fair amount about the tailoring industry. I spent quite a bit of time in London with my uncle, who lives in North London, a park called Islington. And I spent time in Savile Row summer between my junior and senior year of college. So that kind of got into the tailoring side, where this company called Astor and Black out of Columbus, Ohio, they were a brand where they sold suits, and they did all kinds of packaging. And it was like, looking back, it was a sales machine. I sucked. I was the worst salesperson ever. And I knew a lot about clothing construction through my experiences, and their garments were okay, but everything was manufactured in China, and it was done very cheaply. And not too long after that, I got out of the clothing industry. My fiance at the time, or maybe even just girlfriend, now wife, told me I pretty much just need to go get a job. So I did. I think I worked for a tech startup in there as well, a company called Zarly. And I was terrible at that, and kind of lost my identity around that point about what I wanted to do with a career. And about that time, I realized I also needed to make money, and wasn't doing that. And went to work at Farmers Insurance, actually dealing with insurance claims, and then got onto a team where we dealt with really old claims and some really bad accidents and things. And all the while still sewing and doing projects. I would modify shoes for guys. I would for old clients, or a friend of mine at the time had a clothing company. I'd work with him as well, helping him out. And then eventually that led into me working for him. And he was a Astor and Black employee as well, or we were all 1099. And so he offered me to join him, and I said yes, because he matched what I was making at my job. And I went full-time back into the clothing world, which was much needed. It's where I needed to be. I mean, when I say I lost my identity, I got it back at that point. It was like, this is who I am. And started to really push the envelope with what tailoring is and what it meant to me, along with obviously the sales side and fashion. But yeah, that was a roundabout way. Really long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, it's all good, all good. So you obviously have high standards. We're going to get into your current company and the quality of what you make. But do you think at Zarly as well as Astor and Black, because at Astor Black the quality wasn't good in the terms of the clothes, or just the quality to your standards? Did you suck at selling because you didn't really believe in the product, or you didn't have a passion for it? Was that the cause of it, do you think?
That is funny you mentioned believe, because I tell that to my wife all the time, because she's also in sales, and we talk about the best way to sell. And it's really believing in the product that you're selling, because then you're not selling it. It kind of becomes a part of you. And yeah, I did not believe in that product or that company. And kind of fell into the same with the last company I worked for. It was I knew that there was better ways to do things. And yeah, it's hard to find that passion and that love, and not that you can't in accounting jobs and things like that, because there are aspects that, if you believe that you're doing something good to help people, like there's a lot of reward to that. And I now, have got to a point where I really believe in the product, and kind of success starts following that.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. So you worked for a couple different clothing companies then, and then you launch your current company, Charles and Richards. What was the thought process behind that, and what made you kind of take the leap?
Well, there's twofold. I had a traumatic brain injury back in 2016, and I wasn't able to work full time for a long time, and I honestly still don't. I work as much as I mentally can. Owning your own company, you have to sacrifice a lot and do a lot. So that was one thing, and not being able to give 100% at the level I was to my previous employer, but also that yearning for the higher quality. I knew that there are better ways. Well, I know how clothes should be made, and how I believed that the product should be, and the previous company didn't want to go down that route. They wanted to keep things the way they were, which rightfully so, keep it simple. And that's right around the time where I took the leap and I went to Italy to work with some contacts over there on launching a company. So that was kind of the twofold, with not having the mental capacity to be a full-time employee for somebody, and also wanting it to be a product I really believed in.
Yeah, so that's it's one thing starting a company, probably you're in your at least probably late 20s, possibly early 30s at this time, but to do it like internationally, and I know that's where the clothing, if you go to London or Italy, Milan, or wherever, but yeah, did you have any fear, or just because you had been to Italy, you stayed as a foreign exchange student? I think as we chatted over coffee, you went during your KU college experience. You did a study abroad program. Did you have fear?
I think my wife had all the fear. I am extremely fortunate that she's got a very, very good career, and she is also very, very supportive. Yeah, there was fear, but at the same time, the best things in life worth doing take a lot of hard work and effort, and doing the things that nobody else will. And you can launch a fashion company today with no experience and find a plethora of manufacturers in Asia, and possibly some in Europe. But yeah, I just delved down that road of finding the best possible people to make the best possible product. And I knew that it would eventually work out with the people I was working with over there. So it was, yeah, looking back, I think I was, really wasn't super worried that eventually it would work out. It just took a lot longer than I anticipated.
So usually I ask people that take the leap, or even if they stayed in I'll say corporate career, who are their mentors. So, but since we're talking fashion, who did you model yourself after in terms of from a business perspective? Did you have any role models and that you learned from, or you just kind of jumped off the high dive alone?
I really just jumped off the high dive. I knew that there are a lot of people in the space I operate, And again, there's no barriers to entry just to open a company. To manufacture and to provide the quality and value that I do took a lot of effort. And I knew that there were some brands out there that did a pretty good job. So like modeling quasi after them was good. Ralph Lauren, his brand was or is his lifestyle. And so I didn't want to just create something that didn't have an identity. And so I kind of looked at their company and what he had done and modeled it after that, along with Brunello Cucinelli. There's another brand that he is an amazing human being. He's a big philanthropist now, but also he's a humanist, I guess is what he calls himself. And we were able to visit them in Solomeo, which is their headquarters in Italy, on my honeymoon, which my wife was super excited about. Well, it was pretty cool because when we got there, we toured the village. He restored this whole village, and again, going into the lifestyle, like he didn't create a brand; he created good for mankind. I mean, he's impacted lots of lives, and in a great way, through the restoration of his village or his wife. I think it was his wife's village, and employing a lot of the people in the area. And I think his company's now valued at a few $1 billion or something like that. So he did quite well. But my wife ended up coming around as we were sitting with the employees eating lunch, and they provide lunch to the employees every day. And it's like 3 courses. So it was a really cool experience. And
nice.
I knew that type of experience could be translated into obviously the lifestyle brand that I wanted to create, giving people more than just clothes to wear. And then I had a business partner in Italy, Claudio, and he kind of was a mentor. He's represented 25 or so different companies that supply the Italian fashion industry. And so we worked with a couple of people at Dolce & Gabbana to develop a pattern that everything would kind of be based off of. So you develop a style, if you will, and it had to be, super soft. So like I had these people, so you have this blend of a couple different ideas, the lifestyle of Ralph Lauren and the luxury side of it, and then the humanistic standpoint of Brunello Cucinelli, and you kind of blend them for garments that are understated and not huge with brand, but also cater to a luxury lifestyle, because that is the pinnacle. That is the best quality you can possibly provide is in a space where the price points obviously are higher.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I've visited obviously your website, your Instagram. I mean, your clothing looks phenomenal, but tell the audience, kind of, what you specialize in, what makes you different, and then we'll talk a little bit on the pandemic and your pre-pandemic world, and now the world you're living in now in terms of your company.
Going back to the roots of like having things made by hand, going back to when I was 4 years old, sewing felt. There's a lot that can be said about having things made truly by hand, not handmade on a machine, but truly by hand, where they're stitched by hand. That quality can't be replicated by a machine. And so when I set out to do what I do now, I wanted to provide garments for guys on the go. And I say that because we live in flyover country. So I focused on jackets and trousers mainly, and shirts. And the way we make our shirts allow for guys to have a lot more movement. I attach the arm after the body has been stitched. And what that does is it allows it to have a higher armhole, which gives you more movement, and it doesn't pull the seam all the way down the side of the shirt. And then the suiting, the jackets are really soft. And what I mean by that is you have, in the structure of a garment, you have a canvas with horsehair is the best quality, and Then on top of that, you'll have a felt chest piece to kind of give you a little bit of structure. But I do a very, very soft shoulder pad and shoulder. And sometimes, well, most of the time nowadays, I do it much softer where I don't use a shoulder pad because the evolution of where things have come. But that's kind of where, if people don't know me, that's making things for guys on the go that they can be comfortable in from 6 a.m. till 2 a.m. the next day. If you fly to Chicago for the day and you've got appointments all day and you get the late flight out at 11:45 midnight and you get home at 2 a.m., like you need to be comfortable that whole time.
Yeah.
And so when I set out to create Charles and Richards, it was with that person in mind, because you need to be comfortable, because if you're comfortable and you look good, you're going to sell the shit out of anything. Like right. the confidence factor. And so, yeah, mainly focus on, at the time I launched, sport coats, suits, shirts, and overcoats, and then a little bit in the accessories with some handmade ties from Naples that kind of went along with everything. So,
yeah. And everything's custom. So what was the process of somebody coming in to buying a sports coat and a pair of slacks? Like, what was that process for them?
Yeah. So originally it was all concierge. So I'd go to guys' homes and offices. And that presented its own challenges because guys are having me come into their space, and I could only take so much with me, and it didn't have the full brand appeal at the time. So I'd go to their homes and offices with fabric books and do the whole traveling salesman type thing where I'd measure them up. We'd talk about fit and how they wanted garments to be. I'd make a lot of notes on their posture, body type, build, any injuries to aid in fit, how things need to be offset. And then, yeah, they would pick out the fabrics of the garments that they wanted to make. Usually we'd sit down, look at suiting fabrics, and pick out a couple suits and then a couple jackets and then some shirts, and kind of have it all blend together where we create kind of the first appointment, the beginnings of a wardrobe. And then from there, once we get the fit dialed in perfectly, then we add a lot more things to their closet, and hopefully they are outfitted fully by Charles and Richards.
Charles and Richards, where did the name originate from?
Yeah, my grandfather, the TWA guy, his name was Charles. So, and then my other grandfather is Richard. And when I put the two names together, Charles and Richard, I just liked the sound of Richards better. So,
yeah,
Charles and Richards. And we were some guys that have come in, they're like, you need to delineate some more casual stuff that I do now from the more formal. And they're like, you should do it Chucky and Dick. I'm like, I don't like that. No, we're going to keep it just
Chucky and Dick's to go with the Richards,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's where the names came from. Again, going back to the heritage side, my grandfather wasn't the most loving person, but Richard, that is, but he dressed very well. He was a lobbyist, and he taught me about quality. And at the time, Allen Edmonds was a very, very quality brand made up in Wisconsin, and they did a really good job. And that's the shoes he wore. And his suits, I believe, were made by Hickey Freeman at the time out of New York. And yeah, he just taught me that you buy once and you buy quality, and it kind of becomes you. So,
what a great way to honor your grandparents. I mean,
and then Charles was awesome. Unfortunately, didn't know him super well before he passed, but at a little bit younger age. But yeah, it's nice to have a little bit of heritage there.
Yeah. So where are you at now? And what was the big pivot during post-pandemic?
Yeah. So during the pandemic, guys weren't buying suits, and events stopped happening. So tuxedos went away. But the shift to more casual really made me pivot into the lifestyle brand. It went away from just suits, shirts, jackets, and trousers to now I make tennis shoes. I've got a small workshop near Ancona, Italy, in a town called Montegranero, which is like the shoe capital of Italy. There's tons of shoe workshops there, and it's a son and his dad, and they make my shoes by hand, literally. It's a really awesome process, but they do anything from tuxedo loafers to boots for riding horses or hunting to tennis shoes. And so, catering to the guys that now the work environment is, hey, I'm working from home, not really traveling much. We don't know what's going to happen, but some of the guys I worked with were well-to-do enough where it didn't really faze them. So they were just, adding new things, but on the more casual side. And then as the world came back, it really pushed it to where guys are now wearing jeans and at the time, early 2022, guys are really pushing the envelope with fun jackets, classic dress shirts still, but toned down with jeans and maybe a pair of my tennis shoes or a pair of boots. So instead of a sale just being a suit, it's now in a culmination of a bunch of different items that guys like to have, where it puts together a fuller look. It also adds more versatility. So that, by the world shutting down, like everybody experienced, made me reevaluate what the lifestyle brand, like what is it to be a part of Charles and Richards. And it is to be versatile, to be able to go from your office to your place of leisure, whether it be a hunting trip with your buddies or your beach house or a vacation with a weekend away with your wife. You needed to have the attire and the complete look to accomplish all of that. And I developed different things to cater to those needs. And each garment is designed specifically for each client. So, guys come to me for jeans, same price they can buy off the rack at a Nordstrom, and they can get fantastic Italian denim from me for about the same price, but it's made for them, and they get to pick out, the color and the wash and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And golf attire is the same way. Everybody's always looking for something that's a little bit different than the next guy, and what better way to have it than have your tailor make your golf attire? And that's a segment that's definitely started to pick up.
Yeah, that's a great. And now you no longer go to clients' homes. You're in a vault, right?
Yes.
Do all the fittings.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. A good friend of mine offered a space up for me. He bought a building, and there was nobody in the basement. And I came to tour the building when he bought it, and I said, "Hey, I want to go to the vault." And he kind of laughed at me because it was storage, carpet floor, drop ceiling, and these god awful fluorescent lights. And I tore everything out, left the concrete, put flooring in, rehabbed some furniture, and found some vintage pieces to put in to where guys came in, and it felt like an escape from the everyday. So yeah, guys now are more comfortable coming here, having a cocktail, because we do enjoy whiskey, and sitting down, talking about life, and designing clothes. And designing their appearance and how they show themselves to the outside world. So it's pretty awesome having the space.
Yeah, it's real cool. I just to clarify, because I had to ask you when we had coffee, workshops you've mentioned a couple of times. That's really kind of where the manufacturing sites or workshops. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we've got, I call them workshops because they are very small. Italy still has this cottage industry where, the sweater, I work with some cashmere companies where we literally have women, because usually it's stay-at-home moms, while their kids are at school, they would have a knitting machine in their house, and they would throw a shuttle back and forth and knit sweaters out of this cashmere. And you get these small imperfections with it, and the quality is just absolutely impeccable. But again, you're talking about one-off, one at a time, one person. And they're actually, we contracted with them ever since we've, my former partner had acquired a smaller manufacturer, but there's still like 10 employees. So these aren't huge factories,
Right. Yeah.
When people talk about like China, I could name 20 different Chinese tailoring companies that have several hundred, if not thousand, employees. We're down to 2 master tailors now at the suiting work, or the tailored workshop, and down to 2 cutters, and then we've got some women that sew the buttons and buttonholes, and some other sewers, but it's still very, very small.
Yeah, and Kyle, I don't know why I'm picking on you today because again, this is another Mike Wallace, just really probing. So I swear, at some point, like the sizes change for men, like like in the '90s or late '80s. I don't know. A large was a large, a 34 waist was a 34 waist, but it seems like now it's like you have to, sometimes I wear a large in something, sometimes it's an extra large. So is there any, what's the conspiracy theory around that? Or just Americans are too obese so that they're happier making a large bigger so the person still wears a large? I don't know.
We are unfortunately a very large country, and I'm not talking about population wise. I'm talking about personal size, weight. First of all, there is no standard. There's allowances that companies do over skin measurements, and they vary greatly between each brand. And there's a lot of detail with it, but they vary greatly between one brand to the next. You'll have a little more consistency with European brands with European sizing, because they have more standardized allowances. Now you'll still have changes because some garments are made to be worn bigger than others, but in general, with the European sizing, it's much more exacting than the American small, medium, large, where larges have gotten bigger.
Yeah, but I think you've made a good point, though. I mean, there's less brands back then too, so there's probably more consistency just because of a small number of manufacturers. So now that's expanded. So that I never thought about that aspect, and it did remind me of I'll have to tell my Italian buying underwear in Italy story just offline, I guess. Well, I don't want to scare too many people away from the podcast.
I think I might have a similar one. Yeah.
Kyle, there's 2 groups I love to help on the podcast with just, leadership advice from great people like yourself. So one is that recent college graduates graduating from KU or K-State, MU, wherever, Avila, Manhattan College. And, you get a degree and you're ready to go out in your first corporate job or whatever job, first job, professional job. What advice do you have for that group of people as they start their professional journey?
We'll start with, you don't know. You don't know a lot of things, and you have to listen. That's one thing I wish I would have had or learned, is that you just need to be observant and talk less, and listen more. And it's amazing what opportunities are out there will present themselves when you just stop and open your eyes.
Yeah, love it. The second group is, once you start your career, you usually have people reporting to you from an HR perspective, so you're not in charge of anyone. So once you get that first leadership position, and now people report to you and you're responsible for a team of people, what advice do you have for that group of people as they begin their leadership journey?
You treat people how you want to be treated. I'm right now, it's just me with Charles and Richards, but during the pandemic, we had logistics people in Italy that helped out, and I have a lot of contract workers that work with me, and being sympathetic to their situations, and obviously there's a degree of empathy as well, but also pushing people in a way to where they're going to realize they can do so much more. That's what I found. We had a logistics guy in Italy, and he's moved on to a different career. But he learned so much while he was with us, and it's really cool to see that development. So you're really not in charge of those people, you're developing those people. If they bring certain things to the table, and you need to see what their strengths are and play to those. The whole corporate world though today, we won't delve into that too much, but shooting people straight is something that isn't done quite as much anymore. And I think that we should really go back to that.
Yeah.
Because pussyfooting around subjects is not a way to create or foster leaders of tomorrow. And that's essentially, as a leader, you want to do that. I know that was a roundabout.
No, I love it. Yeah, no, I think it's great advice. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for being on the Corporate Couch. I love your story. I'm excited to see how far you take Charles and Richards, and I just love your clothing line, and I'll have to get to the vault for some bourbon real soon. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully we'll be able to do another one of these when we've got 30 or 40 employees and things are a little bit more hectic around here.
Yeah, I love it. Have a great rest of the afternoon.
All right, you too. Thanks.
Oh, there's so many things I want to talk about with Kyle. A little different guest in terms of a career trajectory, but he just the love of clothing and tailoring. He started sewing at 4 years old. His grandmother worked at Nell Reed, which is a unbelievable story. Started a women's dress company in 1919. So she's one of the, I'll say, first female entrepreneur successful. So built a great business that Nell Reed was in business for 50 years after that, I believe. So it just crazy that he just fell into it. Like a lot of the guests we had, they've gone through a different career path and turns and twists, but he was basically dead on into the clothing industry. Traveled internationally as a high school exchange student to Italy. In college, he did a study abroad in Italy. Of course, Italians are the greatest, clothing designers,
Of course,
tailors, and he said he fell in love with La Dolce Vita. So I love that line. But the other thing, he started his own company, and when I asked him why, there's two reasons. So he had in 2016, a traumatic brain injury that still impacts him to this day. So when he started his company, Charles and Richards, actually named for his two grandfathers, it was for two reasons. He was yearning for greater quality product, in terms of the quality of the cloth and the design and things like that. But I thought it was very, I don't know if noble's the right word, but doing the right thing. He knew he could not give 100% to his current employer because of his traumatic brain injury. So he thought, let me just go out on my own for those two reasons and start this company, which I really thought was phenomenal. And, I've been to the website, and the clothing quality just looks amazing. And I can't wait to visit it. And plus they have bourbon, so that's always good.
Can't beat that, right?
Yeah. Joe, what did you take out of the episode with Kyle?
Go buy some clothes and get some bourbon at the same time. How could it be any better than that?
Exactly.
This was an amazing interview, and certainly one of the most unique interviews that we've ever had. Kyle isn't a C-suite executive like a lot of the people that we've talked to, so he doesn't have the experience and all the leadership and everything, but he's an incredible human being and has an incredible story and an incredible entrepreneur and just a unique experience, which just shows what people can come to expect on the Corporate Couch, that we bring a little bit of everybody to the couch to talk about their lives and talk about their experiences. He took neckties from women, from their father, and made them into handbags. I mean, how do you get more unique and more loving than that? That there's not very many people that could put that kind of thing on their resume. I think.
Yeah, these people had passed, so there was to do that because they could carry the memory of that deceased loved one.
And, I've heard of people like taking a stone from their grandmother's wedding ring and making it into a necklace or something like that. I've never heard of what he has done before. And that just adds to the uniqueness and the charm of this kind of interview. It was just amazing. Another thing about this interview that was interesting is he didn't mention this quote but the quote of "do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life" is certainly true in Kyle's life. He tried several different things. He tried in sales and was not particularly successful at that, and tried a couple of other things, and finally realized that he had to go back to what he learned when he was 4 years old from his grandmother, and that's the sewing experiences. He needed to manufacture and design men's clothing, and that's what he needed to do with his life. He is apparently incredibly successful at doing that. That just tells screams to our audience that that's what you need to do. Find what it is that you love doing, and all of a sudden you don't have a job anymore. People just pay you for doing what you love doing. I found that true to a certain extent in my own life, and that's definitely true, or should be definitely true for everybody in our audience.
I totally agree. And would it have been devastating when I asked him the question, were you the best dressed in your senior class in high school? He said no. I mean, that would have been devastating, but I had a good feeling. He was.
And you were
course.
too.
And I was too. There you go. But I had a very low bar. I'm sure Kyle did not. So I love the conversation with him, love his story, and love that he gets to go to Italy 2 or 3 times a year.
Wouldn't that be cool? I mean, and that's his job. He gets paid to do that. It's wonderful. I love it.
Yes. Joe, what leadership advice would you want to impart on our great audience today?
We are going to go to that great philosopher named Stephen Wright today, who one time said 82.7% of all statistics are made up on the spot.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.